Trudeau just gave $3.2 billion to Kiev this past week for building museums.
I know. This is where I'm getting emotional because I'm like, for a freaking museum, do you realize how many houses that could build in our city right now? Like they're removing tents right now as we speak. And there's people who are homeless and who need shelter and who need food and who need care. And we are building a freaking museum in a far off country. What the hell?
We wanted a museum here. And Team Houston said, no, we actually got to build houses here. Why can't we get a museum? Ukraine gets a museum. We want a museum.
Yeah, that was for art too.
Yeah. We got stuff to show here, man. What the heck's going on?
Get our Maud Lewis going.
Yeah, seriously. Dude, yeah, there was a lot in this massive bill or money they just sent over to Ukraine. And it's just to rebuild their infrastructure, to rebuild what they're doing over there. I'm like, what in God's name is happening right now? Like, I read it and I'm just confused.
Yeah.
I'm just like stunned that it's just happening, flying right in our faces, and we can do nothing about it. It just reminds me of a line that The Rock would spew a lot back in the early 2000s. Like, and there's two things you can do: absolutely nothing and like it. That's how I feel about this.
Yeah. That's exactly right, because I'm looking at this. Well, we have no mechanisms in our country to oust this leader. If you have a minority government here that is joined hand in hand with the NDP and then oftentimes with the Bloc as well, I mean, what are you going to do? And to take an aside here, when you're looking at polling data, I'm concerned because I know that there's like a big projected landslides and things like that. But when you actually look at the amount of people who are voting for different folks, if they wanted to, and if they got another minority government, they would form another coalition government. It would be right back into where we're at. So that's a second concern that I have just coming up on when we go to our elections is the fact that people can't just go, oh, they've got this. It's like what Jennifer L said, like you have to play to win at all times. Mm-hmm. So, and this is one of these things that I think that the conservative government needs to call out. They need to say, hey, the fact that you're building a museum in Ukraine while we have people sleeping on the street in Toronto, in Halifax, in Kitchener, in Vancouver, in Calgary, in every city in this country, no matter how big or how small the province, PEI has people sleeping on the streets that they never had before in tents. PEI, the population of PEI fits into Bedford, Nova Scotia, a community of Halifax. So this is where I'm like, this is where they need to start poking holes in things. $3.2 billion overseas of tax dollars. We don't have that to give away, unfortunately. It'd be wonderful if we were a rich nation like Saudi Arabia or something like that. Where's their donations? I mean, they've got Palestine, Israel right there. Why aren't they donating any money to people? Why aren't they airdropping food? And these are the questions that are not being answered. And this is what annoys me. So I'll leave it at that. You be the judge and make your own decisions. But right now we have people that are hurting in our own country and in our own borders. And that's where the money needs to go.
Absolutely. And the question then also comes down to this. And there's a slight detail I forgot to include in this that kind of really frustrated Putin, was the fact that official declarations were made to bring Ukraine into NATO.
Yeah.
That's really what stuff is.
And that's what he said too. And the worst part is that we watched together the Putin interview. And before we even started, we're like, 98% of this is going to be crap. Like, he's the biggest propagandist out there. And what concerned me is the amount of people on the right who are just like, yeah, Putin. I was like, no, this man is an evil dictator who has people killed. Like, no, we're not on his team here. But like, that's where I'm concerned that like we've degraded our own governments and we've lost so much trust in our own governments that we're now supporting a dictator.
Rooting on dictator.
Yeah.
Well, there was one individual, it's actually Tim Pool, that put it in the best way possible. He's a content creator down in the States. And the way he put it was, Putin's a bad dude. Joe Biden is also a bad dude. And then in our case, Justin Trudeau is a bad dude. But the reality is, there are bad dudes. And they at least have a runoff of interest with us, to a degree. as much as they're doing things that are against our interests, them wanting to get rich, them wanting to, you know, do well for themselves, the runoff from that is going to benefit us more than whatever Putin wants to do. And that's just the reality of it. It sucks, but it is what it is.
They call that choosing the lesser of two evils, basically.
Yep.
Yeah. So where we were going with that, though, is the fact that Putin did talk about the fact that some of these things that are happening right now, like Ukraine joining NATO, these are the reasons for the war starting in the first place. And I think that's partially true, but I think the other half of it is that he's also an imperialist that wants to, you know, reunite Mother Russia and have himself like up there along with Catherine the Great and all of his other war heroes. So, I mean, he runs around, you know, shirtless, bareback on a horse, for Pete's sake. Like, the man loves himself, and is a little out there. But in that one instance, like, he's not wrong. Like, bringing Ukraine into NATO was the thing that he said he didn't want. And that was the line. And then he saw the writing on the wall. And then this is where this war came into play. And that's where I was like, Russia didn't have any credibility until they did that. And I was like, crap.
Yeah. And then on top of that, you know, allegedly America blew up the Nord Stream pipeline.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, oh, well, Russia did it themselves. And it's like, this is like their one specific thing they really rely on for their commerce. Why would they blow that up themselves for a simple red flag, like, or, of a false flag? That makes no sense to me. Aside, like, but when you look at Biden's interview 6 months prior saying Nord Stream might just go away if Russia does anything to Ukraine. Oh, Russia goes in Ukraine. Oh, Nord Stream pipeline, boom, goes away. But we want to say Russia did it. Got it. Makes sense to me.